Welcome back to another episode of the Lounge Remix. I'm your host, Mr. Big J, the Lounge Heavyweight Champ. I ain't got my belt tonight, man, but we back into it. And as always, my very appreciative co-host, Coach of the Year himself, DPOY, three-point champion, all-around great guy. It's my boy, Mr. Sherm the Worm. How you doing, sir?
Howdy, howdy. I'm feeling good, feeling good. Excited to be back on the pod, ready to get to it, man.
Hey man, before we get too far into it, Mr. Sherm, I got a question for you. Every episode, I gotta almost test your ball knowledge, man. I got to. Some light. So I'm going to name a few NBA players for you, and I just need you to let me know and give me some reasons why if you feel like they are a Hall of Fame player or they just gonna go down as another one of them ones, man.
Let's get to it, man.
All right. First on our future Hall of Famer list, I'm gonna go with some who are, in some mind there's no doubt, in others' mind it's a 50-50 shot. So let's start off with Mr. Julius Randle.
Julius Randle. Now, you talking about at this point in their careers or moving forward?
Moving forward, because I feel like you gotta give people some time.
Moving forward, I mean, Julius Randle, good player, but he's not a great player. And I think you got to be one of those great players to make the Hall of Fame. So I don't think it's a chance for him.
Oh, you gotta be one of them ones to make the Hall if it's you. All right, another guy, Mr. 70-piece Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell, absolutely. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. I don't know if how things are going to go for him with his Cleveland tenor, but I think eventually, if he gets on a team that's championship caliber, maybe makes a couple more deep playoff runs, I think for sure I can see him in the Hall of Fame one day.
All right, we're gonna mix it up a little bit. Mr. Tyrese Maxey.
Come on now. You already know how I feel about Tyrese Maxey. I think he's one of the most overrated young players in the league. Not a chance he's in the Hall of Fame.
Mm, Lordy. All right, so moving on, we got Mr. Zion Williamson.
Zion is a good one. Now, if you asked me a couple of months ago, I would have said not a chance. I think he flames out. But recently, he's been on a good stretch in his career. He's been playing well. The Pelicans are doing good. Ultimately, with all these guys that you mentioned so far, their Hall of Fame resume is going to come down to their playoff success. And I think right now, you look around the league, they're not at that point where they're having deep postseason runs. But I think if Zion can get to that point, and if he can stay healthy, I think he may sneak into the Hall of Fame one day.
And we're gonna talk about this in our next regular episode of the Lounge, but I do think that this may be one of them years for them to make a decent playoff push. But we'll talk about that later. And last but certainly not least, Victor Wembanyama.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, this guy, he's a Defensive Player of the Year, the race as a rookie. I think he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. He's probably going to win a future MVP. And in my opinion, if you win League MVP, you're a bona fide Hall of Famer. Like, that's just an automatic lock. So Wemby, I think for sure. If he continues to build on his career so far and he lives up to all the hype, I think for sure he's a no-brainer Hall of Famer.
All right, and one more for the culture. Well, this is the guy that made me really think about this topic with you, Sherm. Mr. Derrick Rose.
Well, I just said, I think if you're an MVP player, you're an automatic lock for the Hall of Fame. And listen, we know what happened with Derrick Rose's career. The injuries got to him. But if you think about the Hall of Fame, for me, we're talking about the history of basketball. And
Definitely.
with MVP, being kind of just acknowledged as one of the best players in the league at any point in your career, I think that automatically you're part of basketball history. When they talk about basketball history and they go through the MVP list,
He's going to be there.
So I think you're automatically a Hall of Famer at that point. He doesn't necessarily have the stats or the other accolades that some of these guys have, but that MVP goes a long way for him. So I think D Rose, I think for me, if I was voting, I would put him in.
Definitely. I kind of agree with you in that. And I feel like it's just I am one of those people who believes that, if you had a crystal ball and you knew his career was going to end like this, I don't think they give him that one. And I'm just gonna be honest, and I hate to be that guy, but you know what I'm saying, Sherm. If they knew what his career was gonna be, I don't think they would have gave him that one, and
And
that just hurts.
let's be honest. I mean, that year LeBron was having a better season anyway, but they didn't want to give it to LeBron because of the whole decision and his choice to go to the Miami Heat. So
Yeah,
if LeBron had maybe better public perception, which is
he
really what
probably
the
would.
MVP award has been about since that decision, it hasn't necessarily been about encore performance. It's been about the storylines. Think about when Russell Westbrook won it. I think Kawhi and James Harden, they were putting up better stats, had better teams, but Russell Westbrook had the narrative and the storyline. So did
Six
Derrick
seed.
Rose. So now I think now with it being such a narrative driven award, I think we're gonna see a lot more candidates who aren't necessarily the best player, but they just have the storyline behind them.
Yeah, because I'm one of those people, Sherm. I don't think Luca may ever. It's gonna be hard. I think until like Luca's gonna have to have that type of season where you can't deny him getting one. You know what I'm saying? It's almost gonna have to be like finish top two or top three seed in order for Luca to finally grasp and get one. And I just don't know if Dallas is gonna be the place for him to get that.
I mean, MVP is such a weird award, man. You think about it, Kevin Durant, for all his greatness, he only has one. Kawhi Leonard, for all of his greatness, he has zero, right? So MVP is just one of those awards. You have to have a fantastic season, not only from a storyline and a stats perspective, but also from a team record perspective. I think earlier this year, when the Mavericks were one of the top seeds in the West, we started hearing a lot of that buzz around Luca. But now the Mavs have kind of fallen back. They're in the play-in race now. And I always see a guy like Shea. I mean, it's hard to imagine a scenario, especially a couple years ago, where you're telling me Shea is winning an MVP before Luka Doncic. But this year, we very may well see that.
Yep. Sir, I gotta always ask you about some basketball related when we get on here. We gotta get your opinion on some things, man. But we're gonna move into something that we know you are near and dear, that sits very close to your heart. It's March Madness. So, Sherm, before we get into your March Madness standouts, let me know, man, how is this tournament chalking up as far as these tournaments in years past? How is this one chalking up and living up to maybe the expectation that you may have had set and some that you didn't? Like, how you feeling about this tournament? Give us your overview.
Well, I think this tournament has kind of been an anomaly compared to the past couple years, right? The past couple years, we've seen so many upsets, so many Cinderella stories, a lot of lower seeded teams making deep runs. This year, we haven't seen that at all, right? Pretty much all the top teams are taking care of business, with the exception of Kentucky, of course. There's only one double digit seed that made it to the Sweet 16, and that's NC State. Well, NC State has been hot for the past couple weeks, so that's not really a surprise there either. So I think that's been the biggest kind of just difference compared to the past couple years. All four one seeds have advanced. I think all four number two seeds have advanced. So all the top teams are taking care of business. And when you look at the rosters, it's the same thing that we see every March. All the top teams, they have veteran players, sophomores, juniors, seniors. They have guys who transferred in. They have guys who have been there before. So I think that's what we're really seeing. And for me, I've really enjoyed it because I've been watching these guys play college basketball for the past couple of years, and I keep seeing them. I look at a team like Creighton, right? Creighton's been playing pretty good. I think they have a chance to go to the Final Four. Well, I've been watching Creighton, the same four guys, Baylor Shireman, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Trey Alexander. They've been there for a couple years now, made a couple runs. So I think that's what I've enjoyed watching the most.
Do you think that with tournaments like these that are showing and showcasing the 5 year guys, like for example, we were talking a little bit earlier about what's the big from NC State? I'm not too big on college
DJ
ball.
Burns.
DJ Burns, I think he was in the class of 2018, so I think he's a 5 or 6 year guy
fifth year
Um,
senior.
yeah, Purdue center. He's a guy that's been there for a while. So, do you think that stuff like this should encourage players to go to college versus taking the other routes or the other avenues to get to the NBA? Are you well basically are you an old school, you a college guy? And when I say college guy, I mean 3 or 4, 3 or 4 year college guy, or are you somebody that's like, just kind of gauge it at your talent? How do you feel about that?
Listen, I think college experience is important, but I'm not anti one and done, right? We've seen it both ways. When it comes to being the best NBA player possible, all right, I think being one and done, if you're good enough to go to the NBA after a year, go to the NBA. Make that life changing money, right?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to college basketball and the tournament itself, look, if you're a guy who has no NBA dreams, stay in college. That veteran experience will lead itself to having a deep run. And now you're winning national championships. And now, hey, wait a minute. I just won a national championship. Maybe I wasn't going to the NBA, but here's a G League team calling me or a team overseas calling me because now I have that exposure. But I'm not necessarily anti one and done. We've seen plenty of one and done players. I mean, Zion, Jason Tatum, Kyrie Irving. I'm naming all Duke players, but we've
But I
seen
mean, that's the one. That's the blueprint.
exactly. We've seen those guys. I mean, think about all the Kentucky guys: Tyler Hero, Emmanuel
D
Quickly,
Book was a one
Max
and done.
D Book, right? Anthony Davis. I mean, we've seen time and time again these one and done players are solid. So I'm not gonna say, hey, you should stay in school for long as possible because we've seen it go the other way. A couple players. We had this conversation the other day about Grayson Allen. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
his freshman year, he was in the Final Four. He was hooping. If he came out that year, he probably would have been a lottery pick. But he stayed in school a couple years. Now all of a sudden, he dropped to the low levels of the first round. Now we're talking a difference in a couple millions of dollars that he could have made. So I think if you're good enough, the hype around you, go to the league. I mean, you're not missing nothing.
Yeah, and then we talk about players like that, those 3, 4 year guys, man. You look at some of the guys who are currently in the league, and we got some lottery picks, like such a, I'm not anti high school because I feel like some of these guys could have legit came out of high school. You can't convince me that Zion could not have, like in that class of 2018. You can't convince me that physically Zion wasn't ready. He couldn't have made that step and potentially went to the league. Wimby's another guy. There's a few of those guys who are, big difference makers. Then you see guys like, Hami Haquez Jr., who's having a solid year. At one point was in rookie of the year discussions, fizzled out a little bit, but still being solid and productive. Was a 4 year guy. Talk about Grayson Allen, and these guys are doing better than certain, top 5 picks from their draft class. I'm not trying to talk about Scoot because I don't think Scoot's a bad player, but if you're just being honest, you're looking at somebody like Scoot, and I'm not saying you draft Hami or you draft the 4 to 5 year guys over the surefire prospects. Because even though Scoot has been having a quotation mark bad year for a second pick, it's not a bad rookie season. I don't think the only thing I say about those 4 and 5 year guys, they're a little bit older, so they're seasoned. But you kind of gotta wonder, does that mean that they peaked already? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to the college experience, it's funny we're bringing up this conversation when we just saw the G League Ignite got shut down, right? A couple days ago. They're not bringing it back. It wasn't producing the talent and the buzz that they expected it to. But for me, I think the biggest thing about the college experience is not necessarily basketball, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these guys are 5-star recruits. These guys are ranked since high school. If you can hoop, you can hoop. You know what I'm saying?
They've been
I think
superstars
the
since they
biggest
went 8th grade.
exactly. I think the biggest thing about college is they're teaching these guys how to be professionals. They're teaching these guys how to be men and how to mature. And when you get to that next level, here's how you carry yourself. I think a guy like Coach K, right? A guy like Calipari, right? These guys, yes, they're telling you about basketball, but more so, you're going to Kentucky. You're going to an SEC school. You're going to Duke, right? UNC, whatever the case may be. You're going to a big program. You're having to carry that. And they're teaching these guys how to be professionals versus I mean, I think about myself. Me straight out of high school, and you just give me a $5 million contract, I'm not going to carry myself the right way. Let's be honest. So I
Yeah.
think that's where the college experience helps these guys. It gives them a little maturity and accountability. It teaches them how to work hard. It teaches them how to be professionals. Now they have that year, they've seasoned, they know how to carry themselves, and they don't get to the league and just squander their opportunities.
Yeah. Because I do feel like G League Ignite was a great experience because it's some guys who legitimately can hoop with the best of them. And I hate that G League Ignite got shut down. But it's just some stuff you just want to see. Like you want to see those young guys get the opportunity because I feel like, man, the rate that we're going, college is getting less and less hype slash buzz because Sherm is looking like you don't need college to make it to the league. Like three, I think, what is it? 4 out of the top 5 picks from this previous draft class didn't go to college.
How successful are they?
Number one looking like a Hall of Famer.
Oh, well, I think when you compare the overseas programs, that's different. I mean, listen, I think the way they do basketball in Europe is a whole lot better than the way we do in the States. And that's why recently we've seen so many European products come out, and they've been fantastic. I mean, we're looking at Luka, Wemby, even guys like Rudy Gobert, guys like Giannis, Porzingis, right? I think the way they do basketball over there, it attributes to what I said about the college experience. Because over there, when you're 14, 15 years old, you're pretty much a professional player, right? They hold you to that standard. And they have these guys working on basketball all this time. They're not worried about Instagram models and TikTok videos over there. They're worried about basketballs and being a professional. And I'm not saying we don't want to have those things. It's not bad to have fun or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
But there's a difference between having fun and being a professional. You know what I'm saying? You can still have fun as a professional, but are you just going out and partying or using your money for whatever, right? So it is what it is. I think when it comes to the G League Ignite, I don't think that was the best situation for a lot of these players because I don't think the structure was developed well enough. I think the coaching staff wasn't good enough to really emphasize these players because you look at it, yeah, you're in the G League, but you're fighting against guys who are trying to take your opportunity, fighting against guys who are trying to make it to the leagues themselves. So these guys are looking at you like, hey, I don't care about your development. I'm worried about myself. I'm worried about getting to the next level myself, right? I think that's the biggest difference. Versus you go to college, a guy like Coach K, a guy like Calipari, their big focus was one and done. I mean, you look at Calipari, his main focus, he says this all the time, is just getting guys to the league. So he focuses on their development. He doesn't necessarily care about wins and losses more so than he cares about developing these players and making them pros. So I think that's the biggest difference between college and these other structures that we've seen.
And before we move back onto tournament talk, I feel like, you talk about LaMelo being an unserious hooper, but do you think we get the same kind of play? Because I think injuries aside, LaMelo is a very solid player, and I think he's gonna be around for a while just off his play style. Paces himself well. He's able to, kind of do what he wants with the ball. Do you think we get that same player in a college system?
Well, it just depends who the coaching staff was. I mean, you can look at LaMelo. He's a very skilled player, right? And there's been a lot of comparisons kind of with Trae Young. If you remember Trae Young at Oklahoma, he had the freedom from his coaching staff, and he was going buck wild. So it just depends where LaMelo went to school. Obviously, if he went to a Big Ten school, I mean, let's say he went to Michigan State with Tom Izzo, he's not doing all that stuff, right? So it just depends where he went. But I'm not the biggest LaMelo guy. I think he's just an unserious player, man. I've said that time and time again. He has all the skill in the world, but it's not translating to anything. And that's what I mean. I mean, if he went to college for a year and he had dudes yelling at him, screaming at him, saying, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you should carry yourself. But I don't think he was in that environment. He was in an environment around his father who was enabling this behavior.
I don't want to hear it. Father of the year. He got three sons.
I love LeVar. It's nothing against LeVar. I love LeVar. I think LeVar is an amazing father. Let me just say that. Let me be clear. I think LeVar is an amazing father.
But he enabled the activities.
He enabled that. He wasn't enabled that with Lonzo. He let Lonzo go to UCLA. But once LiAngelo and LaMelo came along, really LiAngelo got them in trouble. Once LiAngelo got in his little trouble, LeVar said, all right, I'm taking y'all away. I'm going to take care of it. But we ain't got to get on that topic right now.
Hey, man, I didn't know you had to partner with you. All right. So, who are some standout teams that you got for March Madness? Give me Sherm's ideal, not ideal Final Four teams that are left, but from this entire tournament, ideal Final Four teams as far as how they played, whether they are still in the tournament or not.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, well, I got to say number one, Kentucky. I mean, I personally love Kentucky's roster. I love all the players on their team. And I was very, very disappointed because I thought they had a lot more talent than what they showed. But I think if Kentucky played up to this potential, I think they're just, from an entertainment perspective, I think they're one of the most entertaining teams. So I would have loved to have seen them go a little bit further, right? I also think about a team like UConn. They're going for that back-to-back championship, first time since Billy Donovan did it with the Florida Gators and Al Horford, Joakim Noah, and them, right? So I think UConn, they've been just destroying, dominating teams, man. Dominating teams. So I love what I'm seeing out of them so far. I also got to say Creighton. I mentioned them earlier. They're a really good team. Ryan Kalkbrenner, their center, he's been just walling off the rim, man. He's such an amazing defensive center. And he's even shown the ability to pop out and shoot some threes. He had a big one the other night. Baylor Shireman, their forward, he's been a dog for them. So I think Creighton. And I don't know about a 14, man. I really like Tennessee, but I think their offense is too one-dimensional. They've been reliant too much on Dalton Connect. I think Houston, I think they've been a pretty good team. They have a pretty good defense, but they've been tested. Maybe I would say Duke would be 14. Now, we all know Duke. Duke has a lot of haters out there. Okay, nobody likes Duke. But the way they've been playing, especially post the ACC tournament when they didn't have the best performance, the best showing, they've come out and they've taken care of business in their first two games. So they have a tough opponent. They're playing Houston. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. But I think whoever wins that game is going to end up in the actual Final Four.
Say no more. Now, we got to show some love to the ladies. Personally, I got to give a huge shout out to that Iowa State team led by, is her name Miss Audi? Audi? Is it Audi?
Yeah.
We got to give a huge shout out to Miss Audi, man. She went out there and dropped that 40 piece. That's crazy. They was hacker shacking her the next game, but I'll let that go. But man, you got to, man. Women's basketball, Sherm, to me is really evolving, and it's evolving at a rapid pace. And man, I'm here for it, man.
For sure. There's so many young female guards out there who are just killing the game right now. I mean, obviously, Caitlin Clark, I mentioned this earlier today, talking to my homeboys. I think she's one of my favorite players, just period. Caitlin Clark, she's been killing it. Hannah Hidalgo out of Notre Dame, shout out to the freshmen, and also Juju Watkins, So those two freshman ladies, they going to be carrying the next couple years for sure. Paige Beckers, obviously, she's been killing for UConn, and they got a couple other good guards. Azzy Fudd, she's injured right now this season, but she's a dog as well when she was healthy. But I think there's a lot of young guards out there that have just been carrying, putting on for the females, and I think the women's tournament has been amazing to watch. I'm watching for teams like Stanford, obviously. Stanford with Cam Brink, she's going to the league next year.
I think she's projected number 2 pick.
Exactly. She's a defensive menace, right? And she's been hooping for them. Obviously, Iowa with Caitlin Clark, we know what she provides, what she brings to the table. She is a one-woman show, okay? And that's not even to disrespect the rest of her teammates. I think they have a good supporting cast around her, good defenders, good shooters who are really stepping up and helping her. The past 2 games that they play in the tournament, teams have kind of been attacking her a little bit, but her teammates have kind of stepped up. and obviously South Carolina and LSU, right? Those are just the obvious forces. And we ain't got to talk about that, man. Angel Reese, we ain't worried about her, but those are just two massive forces in college basketball on the women's side right now. So I expect to hear from them in the Final Four.
Man, that's wise word. See, this is why we got you here, Sherm. How many people you know watching both sides of the bracket? If I'm not mistaken, the group chat the other night, the women's side of the bracket got a little more motion than the men's side right now.
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely.
saying. I've been seeing some crazy games on that women's side, man. But
That
man,
West Virginia game versus Iowa last night, man. I had to tap in. I was watching the I was watching the Celtics choke all over themselves, and I said, "Hold on, this is a close game right here now." So I for sure had to tap in, man. So that's a big deal when you make me turn off my Celtics to watch women's basketball. But like I said, Caitlin Clark, she's putting on right now one of my favorite players. I got to get her. I got to get her jersey, man. That's all I know.
hey man, you got to do what you got to do. I feel like women's college basketball. I feel like the reason that tournaments, especially as of recently, have been so good is because one, women's basketball has gotten significantly better, and it's because it's getting more respected and it's getting treated like a big deal now on a more national stage. Two, they got some hoopers out there. Like it's some dogs everywhere. Not in a disrespectful way. It's some dogs everywhere. And three, we know that, the way the WNBA works, you have to be over a certain age. So we know that we're gonna get these great matchups at least 3 to 4 times. You know what I'm saying? Because we know they're gonna be there. Like
Absolutely.
we were just talking about this, that if Iowa and LSU both win, that's a rematch of the national championship. So like it's stuff like that. It gets you involved. I'm a big wrestling fan. It makes you feel like it's wrestling. We getting these matches, we getting these things we want to see, and it's always something new. And I think that's one thing. That's the one thing that I like about going back to, like you said, going back to college for multiple years. Because in college football, you're gonna have some great games like that because you're gonna have 4 and 5 year players all over the place.
Yeah, man, it's definitely the continuity. It plays a big part for me anyway, the entertainment value of it. But I look like Caitlin Clark, right? How she's become one of my favorite players. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, I just turned on the TV. It was an Iowa game. I was watching it. I was like, oh, she can hoop. Like she's a bucket. You know what I'm saying? And I just been from that point, I've been following her for the next couple years, and she's stayed at Iowa. I watched that team grow and develop and get better, so I'm familiar with them. So I'm more inclined to watch them. Right? I want to watch Hannah Stolke. I want to see Kate Martin hoop as well as Caitlin Clark. You know what I mean? It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Paige Beckers. I mean, I've been following her since she was a freshman, right? So just seeing that continuity, it makes a big deal for me.
Yes, sir. I definitely see that. I definitely see that being great, man. And I can appreciate good basketball more than anything else. Whether it's men's, women's, whatever. Good basketball is good basketball.
Absolutely.
So man, yeah, we didn't enjoy basketball type of timing. But man, we got one more thing to hop on to, man, on this lounge remix episode. Mr. Sherm, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to give me, a couple of players. I'll prefer you do three, but if you can't, you can't. Some players to give redos on their careers. And you let me know how you're redoing them. It doesn't have to be in crazy detail. Like, for example, the quick one is probably a Derrick Rose. Everybody say they want to give Derrick Rose the opportunity. Tibbs take him out, whatever. But even if Tibbs takes him out, there's still no guarantee. There's nothing you can do to prevent having bad bones. And I would love to start off because I have a player in mind who still had a salvageable career and potentially a Hall of Fame career, who I feel like would have been just way better without certain things happening. My first guy is Ron Artest.
Mm.
And I say I would love to give Ron Artest a redo off of the Malice in the Palace because that he basically blackballed himself with that. And for a lot of people who don't know, going back that season, Ron Artest was a problem Ron Artest was going to be one of the first players since you don't know, I don't know who, but he was top three in MVP voting and top three in DPOY up to that point in the season. And he was projected to be a first team All NBA player and a first team All Defense, as well as either winning DPOY or MVP or potentially winning both of them. And the Malice in the Palace, it destroyed all of that. And so with Ron Artest, I would I would take him out of the Malice in the Palace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. He was a dog.
I'm
He was
telling
a
you.
dog for sure.
So that would be my first player. And I was looking at it. Um, man, with Ron Artest ended up getting suspended 86 games because of the Malice in the Palace.
That's like a season and then some, man. That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
And they were somewhat in the middle of the season. So like that's kind of the crazy part. They suspended people for a total of 146 games during that time. So that is crazy. But that's my number one guy. Who you got for me, man?
This is tough. This is a really tough. I think there's a lot of guys who I can really like pencil in on. I gotta say, maybe Charles Barkley.
Why
Probably
you say
Charles,
so?
because I just think his first couple years in the league, man, Philly just messed up how they were constructing the team around him, and I just think he just doesn't get the credit he deserves for being a bucket, man. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer for good reason. The only thing he's missing in his career is a championship. I think there's a couple of things with him when he was in Philadelphia. He wasn't always in the best shape. And look, he admitted all this stuff. He was in the best shape in Philly. Then later on in his career, I think he was on that Houston team, and they were pretty good, but he got injured. There's a couple different areas in his career where he was just set back a little bit, and he never fully got over that hump where he could have won a championship. So I'd have to say Barkley, because wasn't he on that team with Scottie Pippen and Clyde Drexler in Houston?
Yes, he was.
I think that team, they had a good chance to win the championship. Rest of the league was kind of softer at that time. So I definitely think if he didn't get hurt that year, they would have had a good chance.
Now, a more recent player who I would love to give a career turnaround to is Ben Simmons. And
Stop that. Come
just
on.
listen, hear me out, man. Hear me out. I think that we take mental health very seriously now compared to what it was even the 3 or 4 years ago that happened to him. But the specific thing that I would change about Ben Simmons, I would not have one. I would not have had Doc Rivers as the coach of my team back then. I'm not even trying to be funny. I just wouldn't have had Doc Rivers as the coach of my team there. I don't know who else was available, but I know somebody was better. And two, if I'm him, I need him to learn how to lose earlier. I need them to, you know what I'm saying? I need him to learn how to lose earlier. Because I feel like that loss and him getting blamed for that entire loss, especially in that playoff series, I feel like because he got blamed for that, that took a huge mental toll on him. And we never truly got to see everything that we could have gotten out of him. So Ben Simmons would be my second guy, and I would figure out a way to teach him how to lose. Because if he knew how to lose, I think we have a whole different Ben Simmons right now. If he knew how to lose.
That's a good perspective, especially when you think about Ben Simmons. Like a lot of the stuff that he went through in his college career at LSU. I mean, they were losing a bunch of games, and he did not have a good mindset or a good attitude about handling things, right?
Nope.
And pretty much from year one in the league, you know, as he started playing, I know his first year he was injured, but year one of him playing, they were a playoff team. They're a good team, right? So, but you think about Ben Simmons, he's one of those guys. He's always been the best player on the court. He's always been top of the rankings, projected number one pick for pretty much his entire life. So I think that's one of the things he definitely struggled with a little bit, kind of coming to a team in a situation where, oh, I'm not the dude. I got to play with Embiid. And then they added Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris and JJ Redick. Oh man, now I'm the fifth option. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
the ball as much as I used to. So I think he definitely struggled with that. And the coaching staff, the GM, even the fan base, I don't think they really handled his adjustment to playing off the ball as well. Not being the best player on the team. I don't think they handled that well. They threw him under the bus. They weren't building him up. But that's it,
Yep.
man.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna bounce it back to you, man. What you got for me?
For my number two, I'm gonna go a bit old school. I'm gonna say LaMarcus Aldridge, man.
Oh, I like that.
I think LaMarcus Aldridge, he was one of those players where he was a bit ahead of his time. For a bulk of his career, he was playing the four. But I mean, this was the guy, he could shoot the mid range. He was a bucket, he could post up. I think if we put him in today's game, he'd be a 5-man and he'd be just destroying teams around the league right now. I think LaMarcus Aldridge, the biggest moment for me would probably be in I forget what year this was. I want to say 2018, 2017, actually, when they played the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Game one, they were up a stack, and Kawhi came down on Zaza Pachulia's foot.
Dirty plays outside, by the way.
And I think if Kawhi didn't get injured, the Spurs probably beat the Warriors in that series. And now we're talking about LaMarcus Aldridge in the NBA Finals, potentially even with the NBA championship ring. So I just gotta say LaMarcus Aldridge, he's not the best player by any means, but he's just one of the guys that I enjoyed watching while he was hooping. And my heart just goes out to him that he never really had that opportunity. He was just in Portland kind of dogging away.
And I feel bad for him also because I was looking at a statistic the other day. When him, Brandon Roy, and Greg Oden played on the same court together, I believe they were like 44 and like 10 when they played together.
Yeah. And imagine those dudes, if B. Roy and Greg Oden could stay healthy, because they were hoopers. Now imagine them with LaMarcus, with Damian
And I was
Lillard.
like, and they would have eventually got Dame.
Exactly. I mean, I think Dame and LaMarcus played, 2-3 years together, maybe? So imagine those dudes just
And
together.
CJ would have came in the fold too because CJ was a late round pick.
Exactly. So that would have been great. So that would have been great just to see kind of Portland kind of hooping, like that.
And my last one, this was brought up to me earlier. Shout out to Els. Me and him were talking earlier. My last guy is Blake Griffin.
Mm.
And the reason I say Blake Griffin, huh?
Took mines.
Oh, I took yours? Well, we could
Yeah.
double up on this Blake Griffin thing.
Nah.
With Blake Griffin, I would have loved to see Blake be out of Los Angeles quicker and kind of went to a place where he could be that number one guy. Because he was, to me, he was a number two in LA behind Chris Paul. But for obvious reasons, Chris Paul. We call him the point guard for a reason. So I would have loved to seen him go be his own man sooner because I don't think he was washed, but you could tell after he hurt himself again in Detroit, it was it.
Mm.
You could see how the age caught up to him. I would have loved to see him get to a point quicker or get somewhere else to where he would have been able to be his own man. Because the first year he's out of LA, first team All NBA. So that's my thing. Get Blake Griffin out of LA sooner and see what happens.
I don't even think necessarily he had to leave the Clippers. I just think they should have got him a better coach than Doc Rivers, man. I think the Clippers waited a little too long to let Doc Rivers go out the door. And part of that was because of how Doc handled the Donald Sterling era. That Donald Sterling stuff, Doc Rivers was a big, big presence. And I think he had that respect because of it. So they gave him the GM title. They gave him the coaching title as well. But I just think Doc Rivers, his time had ran up, but they left him on a little too late. And we saw that team kind of broke down a little bit.
Yeah, and I can't be mad at the Doc Rivers keeping him around because man, that Donald Sterling thing, that is a black stain on NBA history. that I'm pretty sure everybody wants to forget.
For sure.
But since Blake Griffin was your third, I can come up with another third real quick
No,
on this
I
one.
got one actually.
Okay, go ahead. Who you got?
You know what I think, man? Russell Westbrook.
Wow. And Russ had a
Russell
Hall of Fame
Westbrook.
career.
I know, but I just think, man, I think he could have been so much better. I think he could have been so much better. And the biggest thing for me, number one, his jump shot, but also the way OKC built the team around him, I don't think necessarily was the best. And we saw in his MVP season, they just had him and a bunch of scrubs out there. It was actually funny when you think about it. They had some talented players on that roster. They had Sabonis for crying out loud, who was an NBA All Star, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but I look at Russell Westbrook's career. I'm like, dude, he should have been up there with Curry. He should have been up there with Dame. He should have been up there. You know what I'm saying? And maybe he is when it's all said and done. Maybe I'm playing a recency bias a little bit.
But yeah, but you kind of have to because you have to when you put the career in scope. I think he's gonna always fall higher than a player like Dame. But you're right; he should have been in top five to top. He should have been at least top 7 to 10 point guard range, and I think he's fairly close to that. But we shouldn't have to say fairly close. We should be able to say without a doubt the guy who has most triple doubles in NBA history, the guy who's MVP, and I think if I'm not mistaken, at least in current and modern era, he's the lowest seeded player to win MVP.
Yeah. I just think about I guess when I'm saying Russ, I'm thinking about that entire Thunder era as a whole. I mean, they had a bunch of opportunities and they squandered it. You think about 2016, they were up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals, and they absolutely blow that lead. Him and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant doesn't get enough slander for that now. Kevin Durant don't get enough slander for that, blowing that 3-1 lead to the Warriors, because he for sure was not showing up in the last couple games, right? I also think about that team when they bring in Paul George and Carmelo Anthony.
That was Paul
Was
George's best season.
exactly. Paul George was having an MVP caliber season, and they were underperforming. They got washed by a rookie Donovan Mitchell, and then they went up against a pretty good Houston team. So I just think his Thunder career as a whole, when we look back at it, they just underperformed and underachieved. I think it's funny you mentioned a guy like Dame. I mean, I think Dame, even if he wins a championship, he's probably over Russ. You got to say, right? So I think it's kind of crazy. We look back at these guys. Steph, obviously, I'm taking him over. Harden, obviously, I'm taking him over.
And I hate that, but yeah.
But I mean, it's a long list of point guards, especially we talking about now. We got Luka, we got Shea, we got in a couple years. It's a lot of point guards I'm gonna get to before I say Russell Westbrook name, and that's sad to me considering he won an MVP.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, I feel like I might be hating, but do you not feel like you could replace him and Shea, and the team may be even better, or could be even further ahead as a 1 seed with him than Shea? I don't think that's crazy to say, especially at Westbrook's peak.
Are you saying take Prime Westbrook and put him on this
Put him on
list?
this team, I feel like they almost can run away with the West with this same roster.
I don't know, man. I think that roster might. I think they might be worse. Honestly,
Think so?
I'm bugging.
I'm not gonna say you bugging. The only thing that scares me is Josh Giddey. I'm gonna say you're bugging though.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say you're bugging. I think it go either way. I do feel like I do feel like he still would be better. But this is the type of team you would want around him though.
you can say that, but I don't know if he gonna pass the ball. If he
I
gonna let
mean,
them, I don't know if he's gonna let
he gonna
Jalen
let them shine.
cook.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's gonna let Shaq cook. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, you
So
might. I might have been
it's
gassed.
and the shooting on that team. I mean, they got better shooters than they did back in his prime. I'm gonna not say that, but I just think he's such a weird player, man. It's almost like he's a center in a point guard's body, Russell Westbrook. If Russell Westbrook was a couple inches taller, he'd be one of the best players in NBA history. You know what I mean?
If he was Giannis's size, I think he would be having a
Exactly.
whole different discourse.
Exactly. But it said like he's a 6'4" point guard, in this day and age, we need our point guards to shoot, man. We have point guards to shoot. And I think that's been the biggest limiting factor for him. He hasn't been able to shoot. And all he does is drive. You know what I mean? So that's easy. When you get a playoff scenario, it's a lot easier to shut down those one-dimensional players. When I know all you're going to do is drive and pass out to Kyle Singler and Andre Roberson, bet. You know what I mean? I think that's it. I think if OKC had come up with a way to get more shooting on those teams, I think we're talking about Russ and KD in a lot.
In a different light. Hey, before we go, man, you know we got to get you on here for our next NBA episode because we will be doing an end of season kind of thing as well as a precursor to the playoffs breakdown. And Sherm, before we go, I think if the playoffs started today, we would get a Pelicans Clippers first round matchup. Real quick, you got to go into some details. Who you got?
Pelicans versus Clippers.
Who you got?
Everybody healthy?
I don't think everybody's going to be healthy, but for its and giggles, sure.
Give me the Clippers.
In what though?
7.
Okay, cool. Okay, just making sure. Because I was gonna say Zion 40 piece in everybody. Nobody on that team can hold him.
You need to stop that. Come
no one
on.
that team can hold him.
You need to stop that.
No one on that team can hold him.
Thing, bro. You've been riding Zion's bike for the past couple months. You need to stop this. First of all, this is gonna be Zion's first playoff series, ain't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then. So you tell me his first playoff series. Here's the thing, man. We give the Clippers too much slander about their past playoff performances. But if you think back, when they were healthy, other than the bubble, when they were healthy, they won every single series.
Oh no, I'm not doubting you that I think they'll win, but I've been seeing a lot of NBA narrative saying that the Pelicans are just gonna get walked, and I don't think so because even when they played each other 2 nights ago, about a week or two ago, and you could see where the issues came in at for the Clippers was with defending Zion. In a scenario where the entire offense is going to be ran through Zion, I see it being trouble, man. Matter of fact, that could be a series where the home team wins every game.
That's a good point. Now, what I will say to the Pelicans' credit, they got Herb Jones. Herb Jones is one of the best players in the league. You put him on Paul George,
he usually blocks that 3.
We gonna have some conversation about Paul George if he gets clamped by Herb Jones, all right? That's all I know.
And the other night when they played, Paul George was playing fine, but it just like when Herb like locked in for a few possessions, Herb blocked the Paul George jump shot.
But you know, I think it's gonna be the same thing we're gonna say about Kawhi Leonard. Because we've seen Kawhi Leonard in a playoff series. He's a different player. And when he locks in on the defensive end, I think he gives Zion the work. So I gotta take the Clippers, especially with their experience.
I'm definitely taking the Clippers now. I'm 1,000% taking the Clippers.
I think it's gonna be a close series for sure.
I do too. I told you, man. If the home team won every game in that series, I wouldn't be shocked because I don't think there's enough games left, and I don't think the Clippers are going to be bad enough to drop and they swap. So I feel like the Clippers are still going to end up being a higher seed. But, man, I just had to ask you that before we got here. But, man, y'all stay tuned, man. This has been another episode of the Lounge Remix. On the regular Lounge Pod this week, we will have playoff breakdowns for you all. And, man, we got to do it, man. By that time, the tournament should be close to being over. So we're going to see Sherm's final 4 picks. Sherm, did your bracket make it out of the first round?
Nah, you know why? Because Kentucky. Let me tell you something. To you, to America, everybody who listening right now. I had every single first round pick correct, except for Kentucky over Oakland.
No way you called us losing first round.
That was it. Only thing I messed up was on Kentucky versus Oakland. And I looked at it. I said, oh my, I could have had a perfect bracket. I was running around my house. I said, let go. Then they go out, they lose to a TurboTax merchant.
Hey, he's shooting nothing but threes.
They lose. It ain't even Oakland, California, bro. You know that? It's Oakland, Michigan. I say, y'all gotta be kidding me right now.
Hey, y'all lost to the guy that they must have looked at the scout report. You know how many he had about this many shots the entire season that weren't 3-pointers.
Yeah, I mean he hit 10 threes on him, bro. But you look at the film. I mean, some of them were just tough shots that he was just draining. I
So
mean,
he's
there's
just a
nothing you
Uda.
can do but shake his hand. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm.
it is what it is, man.
But hey, man, shout out to our draft analyst, our expert. You know what I'm saying, Mister the Worm himself. Go ahead and give yourself a little round, Mister the Worm. Go ahead, go ahead. Hey, man, we also got to get back with Sherm, man. He got to give us his 2.0 mock draft, man. We've seen a few pro days be knocked out the way. We got to get that 2.0 from you soon, Mister Sherm.
Hey,
We
man,
need that.
NFL draft right around the corner, coming up in April. I'm locking in. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of stories, a lot of free agent movements that have occurred that's going to impact the NFL draft. So y'all just gonna have to walk with me. JJ McCarthy, walk with me now. JJ McCarthy to the
Mm.
Vikings, walk with me.
Not walking with you, brother. I'm sorry. If they take that man that high, something's got to be wrong.
Hey man, you saying that, but he gonna be killing the package for the next couple years. Yes, sir.
You
Hey,
don't
but
even
jealous.
believe it. All right. We gonna call it at that because we're not gonna get into too many more lives tonight. Thank y'all for pushing through and sliding through with us, man. I'm your host, Mr. Big J. That's my main man, Mr. Sherman the Worm. And man, we out of here, baby. Peace.
Peace and love, y'all.